your screen and tell us a bit about how you guys at World Animal Protection are using AMP Impact.
Great, thanks, Zach. So I'm Stephanie Straszynski, the current project manager or manager of our AMP Impact system of World Animal Protection. A little bit about us. We are an animal welfare campaigning organization, so we're trying to move the world to protect animals. We have 14 offices in 14 countries, work in more than 50 countries, collaborating with local communities, governmental organizations, governments to kind of responsibly and sustainably change animals' lives for the better. We've got systems change approach now, so really trying to, influence things at a very large scale. So we're acting at a global level, trying to use our voice to put welfare on the global agenda and change the way that the world works to end animal cruelty and suffering. So we are a campaigning organization, and we are, as I said, moving the world to protect animals. So measuring that advocacy is really key to our work, and that requires oversight of our relationships, and that's quite a lot of relationships with external stakeholders. So this is kind of moving into how we work. Before AMP Impact, we relied on really manual processes to keep track of project delivery indicators. We had 4 static quarterly reports in a year, and we had no CRM, like no kind of relationship management database for tracking stakeholder engagement consistently. This is a screenshot of one of our old quarterly reports. So you can see there's a lot of pages, it's got tables in it, it's got pictures in it. It was the kind of one size fits all solution to reporting, but that was the only place that you could get any data. Essentially, we pulled it through to Excel, or we kind of manually copied it through to Excel, but super manual, super static. This here is how we used to track our stakeholder management. So you can see we've got these stages of identified, engaged, activated, and we're tracking both the movement and the position at the end of the year. So this was our stakeholder management. Unsurprisingly, this left us pretty data poor. It consumed a lot of time and resource to be driving these manual processes that didn't yield much benefit. So then our solution, we're almost a year into our use of the system at the moment. This is a fairly simple diagram, but what is interesting about our solution is that it's all within AMP Impact, but Salesforce being a kind of CRM by nature means that we are able to use all of the stakeholder management features as part of our own kind of stakeholder management systems. So we're using it as a CRM. So we have stakeholder and contact records. We're logging activities. Those are the Salesforce activities we're using. The integration with Outlook is really, really popular. We have, so much, especially now, of what we do is all digital. So the fact that people can log their emails to records in the database, even without having to enter it, is really, really helpful. We have relationships between hierarchical stakeholders. We have non-hierarchical relationships as well. And then we can actually take advantage of the report and subscription features to then be able to distribute and share information on that stakeholder management side. So that's kind of one arm of our solution. The other is the campaign management. So that's all the project information, the stuff that is much more in AMP Impact's kind of background, really drawing on that part of it, the indicators, targets, results, AMP Impact activities for tracking delivery in campaigns, and then dashboards, reports for project delivery, data visualization, that kind of stuff. So we have both of those things that are kind of working within our environment. And then this one in the middle is called the stakeholder engagement, in brackets, lobbying records. So this is a custom object that we use to track the progress a stakeholder makes through our engagement cycles. So essentially it's like a pipeline, which is a more familiar way to describe it, that moves. So what you were seeing in the previous slide, this is our pipeline. So in AMP Impact, this has been turned into a custom object that we're using. I will show you what it looks like to kind of manage the progress of these organizations through this lobbying pipeline. The reason I'm talking about this and wanted to zoom in on this, and it kind of has a theme, I guess, with the earlier demo, is automation. So we use the aggregation features to actually generate results on the basis of those records. So it's a simple diagram, but aggregations are somewhat complex. So hopefully it is helpful that it's simple. So we could have 4 different records here with different stages in the pipeline. An aggregation can then run a result and tell us how many are at this stage, how many are at that stage, and how many at the other stage. That's a single aggregation example. What we're actually doing is a whole lot of aggregations. So we have lots and lots of records of lots of different people, sometimes even the same organization that's moving through several different issues. And then we can actually aggregate those results to the specific objective. We can get even specific in terms of what type of organization it is. And what this does is it actually generates the results against our project indicators through use of the CRM functions. So that removes the need for a manual input of results against those indicators. So when someone kind of reaches the final stage in the pipeline, they have basically done something that meets the target that we have, rather than then them have to manually write in, I have achieved one thing against that target. The aggregations are actually now able to populate that result for them. This is what it looks like. I can see this question in the chat. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Zach. I think it's very cool. So it's kind of why I wanted to talk about it, because I know that aggregations are not are one of the lesser used features. So I just wanted to kind of spotlight what it does for us. This is what a record looks like. So you can see that we have a cycle stage here, which says activated. It's linked to campaigns. It's linked to objectives. We have influence on the campaign, variety of other things. The records are relatively simple by nature. And an advantage of working this way is that this record can transfer across multiple years and different campaigns. So you can see this is campaign 2022. Some of these engagements, they take years. And previously we had no data continuity, whereas now a record can run for as many years as it's required to. And when it's complete, you mark it as complete and it kind of becomes archived. But you can change what objective it's on, what campaign it's on. The record itself is much more permanent. So it really allows us to more easily manage these pipeline stakeholders moving through this pipeline over a long period of time, which particularly as we move into systems change, it is going to take a long time. There are people that we work with for years, and actually being able to have a running history of our engagement with them through those years is really, really helpful for us from a, stakeholder management and then campaign management point of view as well. So this is what the aggregations look like. So the result is here. You can see it's not an input box, it just appears. So we have the aggregations set up to refresh monthly at the moment. So every month, the system automatically correlates and produces results based on all those records. So it means that even though we run on a quarterly reporting kind of cycle, if those records are kept up to date more frequently than that, the results are going to be there within the month, essentially. So we're not waiting 3+ months to actually see a result. If the CRM kind of stakeholder management side is kept up to date, the result is there as of the first of the month, basically. So it's a step towards us getting even more dynamic data. Some benefits and challenges of this I thought might be nice to talk about. So one of the biggest benefits of working in this way is that the stakeholder engagement data and our project delivery data exist in the same environment. So they can be combined together in dashboards, so we can see things from both kind of functions and sides of the system in the same place. It really is very convenient, and it's very helpful to have one place where we're pulling in a lot of information about what we're doing, things that we've not had before. So it's really expanding the sort of opportunities for us in terms of how much we can see in the same place and how we can actually work with that data. The fact that we have automated results based on using these stakeholder management functions reinforces the use of those functions. So in theory, it's driving wider engagement with the system, because your results aren't going to generate if you don't keep your stakeholder management up to date. So it then becomes a feedback loop that encourages people to keep using the stakeholder management side, because if they don't, their results aren't going to pull through. It also removes human error in the manual input of those results, because the system is calculating them for them. In terms of what might be some of the challenges, aggregations are a complex feature, so we have had to test and adapt how we use them to be most effective. And it does rely on correct and timely use of the stakeholder management functions to generate correct results. You can describe that as a challenge. I think it also has advantages in a way, because it actually then again brings that loop back and encourages correct, timely use of the system and stakeholder management to be kept up to date and accurate in order to have correct results. So if people's results aren't correct, you can say, well, it's probably because you need to go and you actually need to be more, pay more attention to your stakeholder management. So it's a challenge with a few little perks as well. So the result, just check this. Yeah, questions. The result, this is just a simple dashboard that we use, but these dashboards can bring together information from stakeholder engagement activity, along with results from our campaign indicators. And it really changes the way that we're able to access and use our data. This system is really dynamic and it's live in a way that nothing we used before was. As I mentioned earlier, we aren't yet at our 1 year mark for our system. So our first birthday is in April, thereabouts. So it is still new and we're making improvements and adding new features. This is actually, that is a chart that's drawn off the custom object, so the cycle stage report, I think. So that's the Q&A. I can show you what it looks like in the system. It looks more or less the same, but if you're interested, I'll just give you a quick look. Here we go. So this is...
If anybody has any questions for Steph, feel free to just pop them in the chat. Go for it, Steph.
Yeah. So this is, these are our indicators. These are all test ones. But if I open up the aggregations, this is the way it's kind of set up and configured. So it is loading. So we can see that it's coming off this source object and it's looking for cycle stages that are activated. So people who've completed that pipeline. And this even has something that says the role is not equal to corporate. So we can have different types. They can be corporates, governments, institutions. If we're only looking at governments and institutions, the rule that I use is it's not a corporate, and that tends to work. So that's how we're using it at the moment. Yeah, again, happy to answer any questions.
Love it. Got a bonus sneak peek for aggregated indicators there for anybody who hasn't seen that functionality.
Yeah.
Probably one of the most powerful pieces in AMP Impact, I think. But as you said, Steph, I think it's because it's a bit complex. I think it can intimidate folks a little bit in terms of sort of seeing how we would use it. So awesome to see that you guys are doing that. And yeah, I mean, kind of pulled out a few other themes. I mean, the theme of just extending the system with custom objects. I mean, that's very common. We're seeing other organizations creating new objects that they need to bring into their system, or creating new relationships within AMP Impact objects where that might not come with the product out of the box. And then love the point around kind of bringing together different kinds of data in your dashboards and analytics. I think that's a big advantage of a system like this, the ability to just have in one place a kind of a central source of truth, not just of one type of data rather, but rather, in your guys' case, kind of stakeholder data, impact data, campaign, project data. In other organizations, it's like, okay, financial data and delivery or activity data and impact data, risk data, having that all in one place. Just see if there's any quick questions for Steph. Here we go from Jafar. Search engine. Yeah. So is this embedded in AMP Impact or needs some coding? Good question. I think he's asking about the kind of querying functionality there in aggregated indicators. You want to speak to that, Steph, just in terms of how it works?
Yeah. So it's I don't code, so I don't think it's specifically coding. The way that it's kind of logic chain based. So for me, it works in the same extension of all the filters, essentially. So here we're just saying count. So essentially look through these records, count anything against this objective. So the objective code then zooms us in on what objective we want, the cycle stage, and then the role. To add new kind of queries, you just basically add a line. So you can essentially set them up with the same sort of logic. You can see there's a filter logic here. So it's essentially just a stack of filters that allows you to zoom in on what it is you want to kind of generate a result on. And actually there's a whole range of different things that the aggregations can do, where you've got like averages, maximum minimums. We actually just use count at the moment, but what I am interested in us maybe trying to do is, this is all very zoomed in to kind of project level, but I'm also interested to see what we might be able to do even at a level above that, because obviously you can set these things up to run across the system anywhere. So we could do something that is actually across all of our programs, and maybe even use some of these functions in more interesting ways. So it is complex, but it does have a lot of potential, and when it works, it really is fantastic, because the numbers are just there. And so I'm really hoping to keep increasing it this year, because the more that we can automatically generate, the less administrative burden that is for people when the quarter rolls around. So I'm really trying to lure people into keep your sort of day-to-day stuff up to date, and then a lot of the reporting is going to take care of itself. So efficiency.
Awesome. And Jafar, this
Thank you, Stephanie.
go ahead.
Sorry, Zach. That's very, very clear. My question to Zach, in fact, how much this is configurable in Impact, and how we can apply this, I mean, to different parts of, say, a system, like results, like activities, like different elements composing a work plan, for example.
Yeah, super question. So this is a native feature in AMP Impact, and you can aggregate data from any object in the Salesforce system or any external object as well. So if you connect to, let's say if you were to set up Oracle or Workday as an external data source and connect in objects there, you could actually aggregate data from those too. Common use cases are kind of what we're seeing from staff. Other organizations are using this to, aggregate transactional impact data. So you might have surveys or attendance data or trainings or that sort of thing. But you absolutely could use it to aggregate data from activities, right? Like what percentage of activities have been completed, or to aggregate the average length of time that a certain type of activity takes. You could get procurement related data up into results as well. I think there's really an infinite number of use cases here, especially if you think about moving towards like operational indicators or corporate operational indicators for an organization. As long as the data sits on Salesforce or connects to Salesforce, it can be aggregated with this. And as Gabby said, we are going to continue extending this feature, and are really keen on feedback from folks like you, Steph, that have gotten your hands dirty with it, to hear how we can make it even more powerful and kind of strengthen the user experience.